the number of filmmakers who've been involved in the Star Wars universe is a very small number. And there's a hypercritical amount of focus on the internet when a director tackles one of these projects. Was it daunting for you in taking on the entirety of this series, knowing that there is that fan base that's waiting out there for it?
I tried, I think, when I approached this, not to go too crazy into thinking about the fan base, because I think that can really kind of turn you in circles. But for me, what was daunting is, obviously this project, we've got huge legacy characters in this, and we're in between two trilogies. So, there's definitely a responsibility that I think really came with this project. But at the same time, it's incredibly exciting that you get to tell a new story with these characters. So, it was definitely a mixture of both.
And there's fans that grew up with the prequels. There's fans that grew up with the original trilogy. Now we've got the sequel trilogy. And this fitting in between those two trilogies, did you visually want to kind of blend elements of both together, or were you trying to have it a distinct look for this series?
Well, what's complicated about that is that they're obviously made at different periods in history, and also the technology is advanced and it's changed over the years and evolved. So, the one that's the oldest is the one that's ahead of you, which is an interesting position to be in visually. But I think, for us, we're obviously in between them, and we're the most connected to the prequels. So I didn't, I'm not trying to replicate, the look of the prequels or whatnot, but, we are trying to make it feel organic, that it should feel correct and it should feel like it's the same world. So I just essentially tried to take the spirit of it, but to, have a visual style that really felt like it was the strongest for telling this story.
And you mentioned in the press conference that there was, you indicated Rogue One was a film. You mentioned that there is that look and that distinct atmosphere to it. Was that something that you used to influence the look and feel of this series?
Yeah, I certainly looked at, everything in the canon, but, with Rogue One, I think one thing that I really respected about that movie was that there's such a strong sense of atmosphere, and it's very emotional at the end. And, that was something for us, that we were really looking at atmosphere and emotion, particularly because we're telling a more character-driven story. So for me, like in large part, if I'd maybe been looking more at references of classic Westerns for something like Mandalorian, this one I was looking at things that were a little bit more poetic or atmospheric, like the assassination of Jesse James or the Proposition, for the references.
And you also mentioned that during filming, you played John Williams' score to kind of get people pumped up and get into that mode. How do you feel with the finished product, the music that's in this? How does that feel compared to all of the other Star Wars films that have been out there?
Honestly, we were incredibly fortunate. I don't know how we got so lucky to get John Williams to come back, but we did. So, he wrote the main theme for Obi-Wan. And I think the first time I ever heard it, it really was just so like classic and emotional and timeless. Like it felt like it had always existed, from the get-go. So it was incredibly special to have that and to have that be part of the show. But we also were fortunate enough to have Natalie Holt and to have sort of a newer voice with it. So for me, it was kind of the perfect blend of, the traditional and the canon and John Williams and everything, but also having another voice in there that alongside the show.
And with everything that has gone on, congratulations on making it through such a long process and everything. And I can't wait for everybody to see it. I'm very much looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
They're coming. Stay hidden, or we will not survive.
Leave us alone.
When the time comes, he must be trained.
Like you trained his father? You still want Kenobi. He's gone.
Maybe you've been looking in the wrong places. I want every lowlife and bounty hunter to squeeze him.